And we will begin our meeting with the invocation. And so I ask that we would all bow our heads. God, we come in your presence. We thank you for another opportunity to gather together. And we ask that your spirit will lead us in this place. We ask that all that we do would be for the uplifting of the spirits of men and women everywhere. And that there the love that you bestowed upon your creation might be seen. God, help us all to do what is right. This we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, our first order of business is public comment. And the first area of public comment that will be heard will be rules addressing the library board of trustees. Rules for addressing the library board of trustees, the library patron conduct policy. So Martha, will these provided as people enter the notice? Yes. So everyone has a copy of the?
Well, they have access to a copy, I don't think they
Okay.
can pick them up. But they're on the way out, they're out on the table if you do want to fill out a form for your meeting. Yes,
Yeah,
they're
in
in your
my packet. It should
packet.
be right in front. You can borrow my copy. Okay? So before we begin, let me give you some general idea about the library patron conduct policy. The Okefenokee Regional Library System strives to provide an atmosphere that is conducive to the appropriate use of library services and resources of all library patrons. Each person who visits one of our libraries is required to respect the rights of our library patrons, respect the property of the library and the property of others, accept responsibility for their actions, and abide by all local, state, and federal policies and law. Okay? So that kind of gives us a good idea of what our library patron, Martha, let me ask you a question. So the purpose of the rules for addressing the library board is so that we can set the tone and everybody get on one page, one accord, right?
Correct.
One understanding. I just want to make sure I'm correct.
And then they'll also have the form if they want to address the board in the future, so they're
Right.
right outside the door.
So if you would like to address the board in the future, we do have forms outside the door that you can complete and turn in to make that request.
Madam Chair, can we open the doors from here outside?
Mr. Dial does, so.
I do, to give folks outside, they can't get in, but they can at least hear what's going on.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're listening to it on Facebook. You see. Believe me, they're listening to it.
No.
But it is hot in here.
Y'all are gonna have to turn your phones off and keep your voices down, we're trying to open the door, but we won't be able to hear it here if all this noise is out here, so it's up to you all, you can silence your phones and keep the noise down, but open the door so you can hear the meeting. They're listening to it on their phones and they prefer to do that.
Thank
Okay,
you, ma'am.
Not want to turn off their phones or.
Thank you.
So we'll do this.
So we'll do that. Okay, so as we prepare for public comment, we're just gonna ask everybody to remain respectful, remaining in your time frame, and we will be following, the rules for addressing the library board, okay? So the first topic that. Lynn, we want to do comments. Thank you. So the first area that we will address is community, library events and activities. And our first speaker will be Andrea Miller, and she will have 5 minutes.
is Andrea Miller, and I'm a member of the Okefenokee Library Alliance. I'm once again standing before you asking that you protect my First Amendment rights to access a public library free of censorship. This library has a great number of activities for patrons of every age, which can be found on the monthly calendar of activities. I have been to several of the book clubs at this library, including the Heathen Book Club, where we talk about all sorts of books and topics, such as Bigfoot, aliens, vampires, lots of fun stuff like that. Why should I have to defend my right to attend a book club to some church lady who doesn't think there should be a book club called the Heathen Book Club? What business is it of anyone else's? And furthermore, who cares how many people attend a book club meeting? Some of the other speakers are going to ask that the book clubs be disbanded if they don't have a large number of participants. I don't know why. It doesn't cost the library any money either way, and it is my First Amendment right to come to the Heathen Book Club. Furthermore, if my teenage son or daughter wanted to attend a teen book club where they were going to be reading an LGBTQ book, I could either say no and not allow them to attend, or I could say yes and sign the parental consent form that all teens are required to have in order to attend. As the parent, I would probably ask to read a copy of the book in advance before I make my decision based on the maturity level of my teenager. That is my right as the parent. I do not need some outside group to take away my parental rights or to push their views and beliefs onto me and my child. The display policy of the library, which is being voted on tonight, also affects the way that various activities and book clubs can be promoted. In order to get people to attend the programs that they might be interested in, you must first let them know about the activities through flyers, social media posts, and displays. Once again, you are being asked to approve a policy that is subjective. Although there has never been a pornographic display in the library, some have asked you to approve a policy that restricts sexuality displays, but they want to be the ones to determine what constitutes a sexuality display. The legal definition of sexually explicit material means any drawing, photography, film, motion picture, leaflet, pamphlet, or magazine which depicts human genitalia or depicts or verbally describes nudity or sexual activity. No matter how you spin it, a rainbow is not a picture of sexual activity. I did not know this before today, but before there was a rainbow flag, the Nazis used a pink triangle to identify and stigmatize men as homosexuals in their concentration camps. Rather than relying on a Nazi tool of oppression, the gay community sought a new inspiring symbol. We've heard from other speakers how this flag stands for this and that flag stands for that. The original pride flag was created with 8 colors, but pink and turquoise were removed for production purposes, and since 1979, that flag has consisted of 6 colored stripes. None of them represent sex. Red represents life. Orange stands for healing. Yellow is for sunlight. Green stands for nature. Blue represents harmony, and purple is for the spirit. You have in your packet 3 pictures of displays. The only reference to LGBTQ persons in any of these displays is either by the letters LGBT, the words pride, or reading rainbows and the use of a rainbow image. I ask that each trustee look at these photographs before they vote and answer publicly in this. Okay.
Our next speaker on the topic of community library events and activities is Ms. Deborah Giddens, and she will have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, regional board members, for allowing me to speak. Deborah Giddens, Millwood, Georgia. I wanted to take a look at the attendance records for the Teen Pride, Adult Pride, and the Heathen Book Clubs. And I did that using the programs report document for January 1st to December 31st, 2022. So attendance at Adult Pride was 19, Pride 19, Heathen 37. That's on a handout that I gave to you. So the Pride Club attendance is low, and to have a teen and adult Pride Club here, I feel like is inappropriate, especially at a public library, and especially for teenagers, 13 to 17. So I ask that you suspend or cancel these book clubs. The Heathen Book Club is actually the mystical and metaphysical book club, and about ghost Bigfoot. And so I suggest we not use heathen anymore because it has a negative connotation.
Time.
1 minute goes quickly, doesn't it?
Our next speaker on the topic of community library events and activity is Joshua Leach, and he has 1 minute.
Thank you, regional board members. I'm Joshua Leach, Waycross, Georgia. I wanted to talk to you about, you do have a lot of programs, and this summer you will have the summer reading program for children. So it's even more pressing that you do something about the bathroom policy, where at the last regional meeting, according to Ms. Martha, 3 people went into the wrong bathroom. So it's not like it's not a problem. It happened in one day 3 times. So also your lawyer, I tried to send you all what your lawyer said. The lawyer that the library hired said that a policy for patrons and employees requiring them to use the bathroom of their biological sex was constitutional, that it would be upheld, in his opinion. And that's illegal, that's an attorney. So that's what I'm asking you to do as far as the community goes, with children coming in and out. Please do something about the bathrooms. If you remodel the bathrooms, I still need a policy unless you remodel all 5, because this is the regional board. Your policy covers all 5 libraries. So unless you change all 5, which I'm happy with, if you change all 5 to single stall, thank you. Sorry.
All right, the next topic for public comment will be censorship and religious overreach. And the first person to speak will be Jennifer Hersey, and she will have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jennifer. I'm an active patron of this library, the moderator of the Adult LGBTQ+ Book Club, and a member of the Okefenokee Library Alliance. I think most of us can agree that public libraries play an active and vital role in our communities, but libraries are a government entity. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment clearly prohibits governmental bodies from favoring one religion over another. Libraries are amazing places for facilitating free and open access to information. Lots of people like to harp on this being a Christian nation and founded on God, but if they utilize the library for accurate history, they would see that while some of the colonizers did identify as Christian, their purpose was establishing religious freedom and separation of church and state, not compulsory religion. Anyone can come here and learn, or not, about anything they choose, including all the religions of the world. Do you know what's not listed as a religion? Being LGBTQ. Libraries are not places for religious indoctrination. Freedom of or from religion is a very personal choice and a basic right of each individual in this room. Every day you make the conscious choice to follow whatever religion you choose, but what you do not have the right to do is sit on a governing board and use your religion to terrorize people who don't agree with you. You're also allowed to be offended by anything you choose, but you aren't allowed to demand that things you're offended by be removed or censored. In the court case of Whitney versus California, a case about the foundations of free expression, Justice Brandeis said, with confidence in the power of free and fearless reasoning applied through the processes of popular government, no danger flowing from speech can be deemed clear and present. If there are times to expose through discussion the falsehood and fallacies, to avert the evil by processes of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. Nothing that has ever been displayed in this library has been coercive. Nothing that has ever been displayed in this library has been obscene. Nothing that has ever been displayed in this library has been sexually explicit. Nothing that has ever been displayed in this library has posed a clear and present danger. Removing materials, books, displays based solely on religious beliefs directly contradicts the First Amendment that guarantees individuals the ability to speak, publish, read, and view what they wish, worship or not worship as they wish, and associate with whomever they choose. There are many court cases defending the right to read freely, where the Supreme Court has upheld the right of the people to choose what information they want to learn. In Elmans versus Selma Union High School District of Fresno County concerning exclusion of the King James Bible, the California State Supreme Court held that the King James Version of the Bible was not a publication of a sectarian, partisan, or denominational character. The fact that the King James Version is commonly used by Protestant churches and not by Catholics does not make its character sectarian. The mere act of purchasing a book to be added to the library does not carry with it any implication of the adoption of the theory or dogma contained therein, or any approval of the book itself, except as a work of literature fit to be included in a reference library. After considering the charge that Oliver Twist and Merchant of Venice were, quote, objectionable because they tend to engender hatred of the Jew as a person and as a race, the Supreme Court of Kings County and Rosenberg versus Board of Education decided that these two works cannot be banned from the New York City schools' libraries for classrooms, declaring that the Board of Education acted in good faith without malice or prejudice and in the best interests of the school system entrusted to their care and control, and therefore that no substantial reason exists which compels the suppression of the two books under consideration. In Case versus Unified School District, the Elos, Kansas School Board voted to remove the book Annie on My Mind from the district's junior and senior high school libraries. This novel depicts a lesbian relationship between two teenagers. The federal court, district court in Kansas found that they violated the students' rights under the First Amendment. Despite the fact that the school board testified they removed the book because of, quote, educational unsuitability, which is within their rights, it became obvious from their testimony that the book was removed because they disapproved of the book's ideology. These are only a few of the myriad examples that you can't censor or remove things just because you don't agree with them. If you don't agree with something, don't read it. Don't participate in the clubs. Don't talk about it, but you cannot remove it. I'd like to close by saying being LGBTQIA+ is no more of a choice than being a person of color or autistic or deaf. None of these are religions or choices. They are fundamental parts of who people are. So stop comparing them and using them to spread hate.
The next person to speak on censorship and religious outreach would be Liv McConnell. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and you have 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. Censorship is a suppressive way to limit freedom of speech, and this right here is limiting freedom of speech and part of our club activities. And I think you should reconsider your biased opinions among the crowd and focus on what you think is best with us. I am an active member here, and I would like to continue to express myself here. It is a safe place for all of us, and I think you should consider keeping it safe than being choosing sides. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
The next person to have public comment on censorship or religious overreach is DJ Blizzard. You have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is DJ Blizzard. I'm an active patron and also I'm a member of the Okefenokee Library Alliance. The definition of censorship is the suppression of speech, public communication, and/or any parts of books, films, news, etc. Humans have seen many acts of censorship throughout our history, such as, for instance, the Library of Alexandria. But many acts of censorship start very, very small and then grow and grow. Our country's story started with the fleeing of a people who were under the religious persecution of fellow Christians that they shared space with. They felt threatened. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment states that all religious beliefs and the lack thereof should be held with respect, and that no laws can be formed based on the religious beliefs. At the core of American values is the respect of free speech. But see, I don't see respect. I do not see free speech being upheld. So the question that I'm going to leave with the board is, what side of history do you see yourself on, and what side do you want to be on? On the side of the oppressors or on the side of the free?
The next, person to have comment is H.M. Hargrove. You have 1 minute, sir.
My turn?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Michael Hargrove from Middletown. Paid attention a little bit about what's going on. I don't see any religious overreach going on. What I do see going on is propaganda regarding the normalization of fringe lifestyles. Kids, like some adults, lack critical thinking skills, which helps them determine what's good and what's bad in life. Under this false flag being mislabeled as diversity, you favor certain groups here. You put the library in conflict with its own mission statement. This favoritism does not enhance an educational experience. It does not serve our community at large. In fact, this favoritism drives people away. Remember, the library is a taxpayer-funded public venue. It serves primarily a fairly conservative cross-section of kids. If you want the library to promote personal agendas under the false flag of diversity, you probably ought to ask them to do it elsewhere. Thank you.
Our next person for public comment will be Samantha, Jake Strickland. And you have 1 minute.
I stand with the Christians in the region who oppose any sort of attack on our religious views. The person who started this topic claims that we are overreaching our bounds. She calls this topic censorship and religious overreach, when in fact it is not us who are overreaching, but the sodomites in this area. They are the ones pushing their agenda into the libraries of our region instead of keeping this place a neutral ground as it always has been. They want to be catered to, and they want to be greeted by their flags and murals that celebrate pride and sodomy. Two things that our Bible condemns in the Old and New Testament.
Sir, I'm just gonna ask, I know you're reading, but when you're giving your public, comment.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Every word I've used is,
sorry.
okay. Where was I?
You have 20 seconds.
I think we need to start that.
Hold on.
Well, she paused it.
When she paused it, yeah, that's what I wanted to provide
And she
clarification.
even added a few seconds back to account for the
So
late.
you were at the,
These flags are highly offensive to myself and most of the people that live in this area. To the best of my knowledge, the library has never had a sign stating "No homos allowed." We've never had problems like this in the past. Instead of offending a group of people over another, why can't this board have some common sense and make this place a neutral ground and put up a welcome sign? Black ink, white paper, welcome to the library. Y'all mess me up, by the way.
next person will be Samantha Swag.
Good afternoon. To accuse of a religious overreach, we must first define what religion is. Under Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, religion is classified as beliefs that include theistic beliefs, as in those who believe in God, as well as non-theistic, moral or ethical beliefs as to what is right and wrong. With this definition, the LGBTQ community could be classified as their own religion. With that being said, the whole purpose of our Constitution's First Amendment is to guarantee separation between church and state. We are pleading to keep the library neutral, as our country has agreed to stay neutral. We are not asking to place a Christian flag or display in the library. We are only asking that you respect our beliefs and our children. We ask that the entire community as a whole is respected. To do that, being a government facility funded by our tax dollars, the libraries would need to stray from any religious or inappropriate displays, as they could be deemed offensive to anyone in our communities. Thank y'all.
Our next speaker will be Stephen Thomas.
Yes, my name is Stephen Thompson. I reside in Pierce County. Merriam-Webster defines religion briefly as the service and worship of God. The LGBTQ plus movement is a religion that has set itself as God in the worship of its own sexual gratification. At its core, it is founded upon the same lie the devil spoke long ago, quote, "You will be like God," Genesis 3:5. But one can be their own God and determine who and what they will be, even if that stands in stark contrast to reality and or God's moral law. And in their pursuit of this lie, those within this movement demand that everyone else go along with the lie and celebrate it. They demand that these lies be prominently displayed in our libraries. Why? To groom our communities, especially children, toward accepting sexual deviancy as good, normal, and healthy, and this ought not be. I'm urging you to reject these lies and religious overreach of the LGBTQ plus movement by enacting a policy prohibiting displays based on sexuality and specifying that restrooms be separated by biological sex.
Next person is Marissa Thompson.
Hello. As a teacher and mother, I use our libraries constantly. However, in recent years, I've often avoided bringing my children inside the libraries with me because of the ideologies being promoted that demand 5 counties adopt a new moral code. Those of us who do not subscribe to this ideology are deemed guilty of sexual harassment, according to the policy manual, if we don't alter our behavior down to the way we address others. We are expected to change our social customs and expectations around something as private and vulnerable as restroom use. The LGBTQ religion claims to impose this new moral code in the name of inclusivity, but it has had the opposite effect, making my family and others less likely to use the libraries we love and fund. I'm not asking for the removal of any books or people from our libraries, but I am asking that you please adopt display and restroom policies that better represent the worldview and values of the people in these 5 counties. Thank you.
The next person to have public comment on censorship and religious overreach is Joshua.
Thank you, Joshua Leach. I don't have much to add to what these others have said. I would just like to quote from, I'd like to remind everybody, those flags that we were concerned about were there for a year and a half, continuously, not just during Pride Month, which shows that overreach of the LGBTQ community. At the meeting where they reluctantly took it down, it was hesitant and it was temporary. They asked the Waycross manager how her staff would feel, and she said, quote, "Many of my staff identify with the LGBTQ community, and if not, they are strong allies of that community." 100% of her staff, she proclaimed, 100% of her staff are strong allies of the LGBT ideology. Then the chair at that time, Ms. Tawana, said that the flags would be a special signifier highlighting importance of its cause during Pride Month, even though they took it down. So we'll bring it back during Pride Month, and it'll be a special, quote, special signifier highlighting the importance of its cause. And then the Waycross manager said, "This is not over, not for my staff." Thank you.
Our final speaker will be Ham. How do you say your last name? Ammons. Yes, thank you.
The Christian Church has not requested anything but to ensure a safe environment for all patrons, especially the children. And we're not hinting at limiting the utilization of the library by anyone. Wrathful thinking does not allow for rational thinking. For religious overreach, if you study history and culture, you'll find that paganism is the foundation for this culture of sexuality and moral relativity. Many may not recognize their neo-paganistic following, and most are afraid to boldly proclaim it. They're also atheists, and they cling together for a common cause. This neo-paganism has been seen throughout the library, and even created a book club for minors under the age of consent, of which its very foundation is based on unnatural sexual attraction. Adults are free to have whatever club they want, but sex and children don't mix. This neo-paganistic sexuality has infiltrated library policy, as has been mentioned, and may even be the reason we only have 2 issues for public comment, neither of which are on the voting agenda. I urge the board and community to carefully consider this religious overreach of neo-paganism that they may not even be aware of, and let's make this library a safe and open place for all.
Okay, we want to thank everyone, for being here, for coming, and being willing to express to this board your views and make your requests. So thank you very much. And we will, move on now to our legal guidance.
Yes, we have, Mr. Wade Herring, who's with Hunter McLean. He was recommended by State Librarian Julie Walker to brief the board on issues related to the First and 14th Amendment, as well as law and public libraries as we go forward and make our decision. And the red folder is the printed copy of the letter he has sent, and just a reminder that letter is subject to attorney-client privilege.
Members of the regional board, my name again is Wade Herring. I'm a lawyer from Savannah, Georgia, grew up in Macon, went to UGA for law school, and I've been in the practice of law for 40 years come this June. And my clients have typically included businesses and public sector employers, such as an airport, counties, cities, etc. And the reason that's important to talk about the context of representing public employers is because the Constitution applies to public employers and public entities like libraries. It doesn't apply in the private sector, but it most definitely applies to you. I also have done a lot with nonprofits and again, public sector employers, public sector entities about governance and how do you do good governance, and not just for the immediate time that you find yourselves in, but also looking down the road as you try to recruit volunteers in the future. How do you do good outcomes? And so, as I say in my letter, let's keep the main thing the main thing. The reason the library system was created in the state of Georgia was as an arm of education. By definition, an education includes new ideas, different ideas, challenging ideas, ideas that we do not agree with or understand, even ideas that we might be afraid of. But that's what an education is about, is that exposure to different ideas. In your 5 counties, the average poverty rate is 21%. In your 5 counties, on average, only 1/3 of your students in the 3rd grade read at grade level or above. 1/3, only 1/3. And with the exception of Pierce County, all 4 of your counties are losing population. So I appeal to you to focus on the main thing, which is the educational mission of the library. A library is a shared public space intended for everyone, and so I appeal to your sense of community. I appeal to the angels of our better selves. I appeal to your grace and to your kindness for our neighbors, all of our neighbors. Library boards are supposed to be big picture, not down in the weeds. That's what your staff is for. Library boards and any board generally sets big policy, day-to-day operations, director, and staff. You are all volunteers with limited time and energy and limited expertise. And again, I remind you to think not only of the present moment you find yourselves in, but looking down the road, how do you recruit new volunteers and recruit new volunteers who would want to be part of the library. And I would urge you, for practical reasons, not to go down the rabbit hole of policies about displays and flags and all of those kinds of things. It's illegal, for one thing, for you to regulate it, and I'm gonna talk about the law in a moment. But as a matter of just policy, think about it. What if you develop a policy that says no rainbows? What about that policy? Well, let's say goodbye to the story of Noah and the ark and God's covenant of the rainbow, that he would not wipe out the surface of the earth with flood. Let's say goodbye to the Wizard of Oz because Dorothy sings somewhere over the rainbow. Let's say goodbye to the Muppet movie because Kermit sings about why are there so many songs about rainbows. Say goodbye to Skittles candy because they want you to taste the rainbow. Say goodbye to leprechauns because they're looking for a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It goes on and on and on and on. What about a policy that prohibits displays about sexuality? That's one of the things that's been asked of you. Well, think about that. There could be no display about Mother's Day or Father's Day. There are no mothers or fathers without sex. There could be no displays about families. There could be no displays about birthdays. You don't have a birthday unless somebody had sex. So nothing about Washington's birthday, nothing about Lincoln's birthday. No displays about Judaism, because the covenant between God and the Jewish people is that the male members of Judaism are circumcised. No displays about Christmas, because Jesus' mother was a virgin. His conception was immaculate.
I thought we were getting legal advice.
You are getting legal advice, ma'am.
This sounds more like a public comment.
Ma'am, I am trying to help you understand the practical consequences of
Treat her with
making
respect,
policies.
sir.
Sir,
Treat her with respect.
People in the audience, please let the board of trustees and Mr.
You just
Perry
cut
have
off
the
the
floor.
board member.
Okay.
Any
No.
other comments, and we'll ask you to leave.
No displays about women's right to vote, which only went into effect in 1920. No displays about how women helped win World War II because they went to work in the factories. No displays about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. No displays about genetics and DNA and how it works. And again, it goes on and on and on. And my point here as a lawyer is, once you start down this path, it is endless. Endless. It will absolutely consume you. As one of the presenters said, there are people on both sides of this. There are people who want to ban the King James Bible. There are people who want to ban Oliver. People who want to ban the Merchant of Venice. Both sides of this, and it goes on and on and on and on. I appeal to you as a lawyer who's trying to help you see the practical consequences of your actions. Don't do it. You will fall down that rabbit hole and it will never stop. But finally, I do appeal to you, to your pocketbooks. Because what is very, very clear is that the First Amendment prohibits regulation of library displays and regulation of library collections based upon ideology or points of view. There's no question about that, and one of your speakers cited several cases that are leading cases in the law, but this First Amendment law is old, goes back to the 80s and to the 90s, long before the same-sex marriage Supreme Court decision, long before the Bostwick Supreme Court decision about transgender and sexual orientation in the workplace. The First Amendment law is old and settled law. So my concern as a lawyer who's been hired to advise you is that if you adopt a regulation restricting displays in the public spaces of the library, and that will lead to other kinds of restrictions and debates, what will happen is that you will be sued. And you will be sued in your individual and your official capacities. And you will be sued in federal court in the Southern District of Georgia. The judges are Judge Baker, Judge Wood, and Judge Hall. couple of senior judges, Judge Bowen and Judge Moore. You will be sued, and further, you will lose, because the law is very clear in this regard. It's not really up to debate. And so you will be assessed damages, including punitive damages, and you will have to pay not only your own attorney's fees, but you will have to pay for the attorney's fees of the winner. And you will lose this lawsuit. The winner gets its reasonable fees and expenses paid for by the defendants. And again, the way these lawsuits are brought, they are brought against the board in your individual and official capacity. There's another kicker. You do not have insurance. And you will when you get sued, what's gonna happen is you're gonna put your homeowner's insurance on notice, because you're gonna want some insurance, and your homeowners is going to deny coverage. And if you try to go out and find insurance now to cover the board's actions, I'm not sure you will be able to under the underwriting process. I'm not aware of any insurance company that would cover this after the fact. So it's gonna hit you in your pocketbook, and it's gonna hit you hard. And Houston County, Warner Robins, Georgia, a conservative place, a sheriff's deputy asked a man who was going through the transgender process, asked for the county to include her medical treatment as part of health insurance. And the county said no. And the county spent $1.2 million in defense fees and lost. And so now they will also have to pay the claimant's fees. These are expensive cases to litigate, these civil rights cases. But it's been, from the record that's been established leading up to this meeting, it's not a great big question about what would be motivating you to make a policy that would incentivize you somehow or motivate you to try to regulate displays in the library or regulate book clubs or those kinds of things. If you go that way, and I ask that you do not, be true to the mission, true to your role as a board, and true to the law, don't do that. But if you do it, my prediction is you will be sued and you will lose. And you will take financial hits individually. And that's a big risk. And part of what lawyers are supposed to do is let people know what the law is so they can minimize the risk. And that's why I'm here today. The bathrooms, that gets to be more complicated because you have both employees to consider and members of the public. And the law is more uncertain. I cannot predict with certainty what will happen on the bathroom issue. You notice on the First Amendment issue, I don't have any problem saying what the law is and what I think the outcome will be. And that's probably unusual for you to hear a lawyer who says this is what's going to happen. That's how certain and confident I am about the law in the First Amendment and what you can and cannot do as a library board. It is clear. Bathrooms, more uncertain. But again, as a practical matter, if you were to pass a rule that says you have to use the bathroom that you are assigned at your biological birth, as a practical matter, how are you going to enforce that rule? I don't know how you enforce that rule. And then what about mama when she's out with her young male children and it's an emergency? Or what about daddy when he's out with his daughter and it's an emergency? Are you going to say, no, you can't use the bathroom? So the law is less clear in the bathroom area. There's ongoing litigation about that. But as a practical matter, I would urge you, don't go there. I don't know how you would enforce it. And it makes you look, quite frankly, distracted by things that, in the scheme of things, aren't really that important. Are there any questions for me?
Yes, I have a question for you. So we received your letter.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that we can read this
and we got a whole lot of public comment from you, is what I think. Thank you for your opinion. There's many lawyers.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Who was sued? You talking about we will be sued. Who's gonna do the suing?
It'll be someone from this community, and you've heard
So
from.
you're saying an individual's gonna pick this up and bring a lawsuit against us?
I am.
And you're saying the county won't support it?
I don't know. I listened to the county commission meeting from earlier last week, and I heard their lawyer very quickly jump in and say, we don't make policy, we just do funding. I don't know what the county would do if the library board got sued. I don't know.
We're typical if you're trying to do the best interest of the community, you know, for the library, that they will support you, you know, in that. You're not doing it, you know, in a vicious manner.
I don't represent any of these counties, obviously. I have no idea what they would do.
To make sure I'm hearing you clearly. So what you're offering us is not what the county or what we may feel is a course of action or a consideration that we wanna make. What you're trying to help us do is understand how, whatever decision we make, what legal implications and consequences and repercussions will come from that.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
So
correct.
So that's what you're hearing, right?
So, let me state it as clear as I know how. The First Amendment says that libraries cannot regulate displays in public spaces and cannot regulate library collections because of ideology or opinions, etc. You cannot do that. If you do that, there are practical problems and there are legal problems. And that's what I'm trying to get you to consider and to think about.
And the legal problem becomes us individuals.
The legal problem becomes your individual problem financially.
In other words, whoever appointed me to this board is not gonna stand behind me in a legal argument of, if it gets that far.
Well, libraries are separate legal entities, and the law is very clear on that, separate and apart from the county, separate and apart from the funders. I can tell you that the county probably would turn to its insurance company, and I don't know what would happen. I can make an educated guess, and my educated guess is they would say, no, that's not our fight, and we're not covering it. You're not insured.
So I got another question for you. So the 11th Circuit Court, it upheld the Florida School District's transgender bathroom ban creating the circuit split. So how can you say you don't know what's going on when it says plainly that they upheld that?
Yes, ma'am. Couple things. That case is gonna get appealed. That's a school, so part of the issue is Title IX, which applies to schools, doesn't apply to libraries. Part of the issue is Equal Protection Clause, which would apply here.
Yeah, we had another lawyer.
I know you did. I've read the letters. I've read the letter.
Excuse me, I would like to hear his answer.
Yeah, so what I've said is the law, but you also have to remember, it's not just members of the public, it is also the employees here. And under Title VII and the Supreme Court Bostwick decision, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission issued guidelines on bathroom use. And what the EEOC guidelines was that you have to allow the person to use the bathroom of the sex with which they identify. A group of 20 states asked for that rule to be blocked, and it was, and that is now in litigation. So that's why I say to you, the law on bathrooms is less certain than the First Amendment. That's the background of why I said that. What I would recommend is that you keep same-sex bathrooms. What I would not recommend is a rule that says, as you were born biologically, because I don't know how you enforce it. And there would be times when you would want to allow exceptions, for example, when mother's out with her sons or daddy's out with his daughters.
Well, a lot of our libraries have a separate bathroom, you know, private bathroom, so anybody that wanted to go in for more privacy, can go in there. So that, to me, helps fix that problem.
It helps to the degree that there's, like, especially here at where there's only one, and it's in the children's area. And the librarians have a practice that they do in trying to assure the safety of the facility, of watching for bathroom traffic, and, asking the children, this the preferable bathroom, so that they can keep an eye on them, and that they're in there by themselves without anyone else. That's part of the way that we try to keep our children safe here. And so, I think over everything,
You work here?
I'm here a lot. I actually am here a lot.
We did have Connor, he did tell you all this.
Yeah,
At the
and
last regional meeting, so.
he did
And you were
explain.
here, Mike, so hopefully you.
I know all that.
Yeah, but I
But I think that's something you can work out administratively.
I think we can work it out administratively too.
Any other questions for me?
Yeah, so this letter is from you.
Yes.
correct? Your law firm, and we're told that we can't share it because of client confidentiality, client lawyer.
Well,
So who's your client?
The library is my.
So the library is public entity, right? So is the taxpayers kind of the client?
Well, the legal entity that I represent is the library. That's the legal entity I
But
represent.
the library belongs to the public, right? So they can see this letter?
Well, the privilege belongs to the client. The client can waive the privilege. That's your decision as the client.
Yeah, so the client is everybody.
That's my question. If I want to show this to another attorney, then I should be. as a-
You absolutely
Because
should.
it makes us, it puts fear that we can't show this to anybody.
No, you could absolutely show it to
You
another
know,
law.
and I do. I want someone else to look at this. This is a big decision. We have a petition for, 2,600 signatures that people do not want these displays. And I feel I have an obligation to represent them. So before I vote on this, and I hope my board will postpone this vote so that we can seek other legal representation, because there's a lot of people in this community, that this does not reflect their values.
Okay, well, and let me address the legal analysis there. So, the basic rule in our country is majority rule, but the majority cannot have majority rule to tyrannize the minority.
But I wanna make sure that I'm not gonna get sued because I do this. I don't appreciate the manner in which this was delivered too, because I feel like as board members, there could be some on the phone that they could be, I hate to use the word fear mongered, but this was intimidating and almost bullying, this letter. And I want to know that I can go and I guess, sir, I'm just aggravated in which the manner it was delivered. Because as attorney-client privilege, I feel that as a voting member of this board, I should be able to seek other legal representation with this. And I was made to feel I had to keep it quiet and be bullied.
Okay, well,
Same here with her.
And here's the legal counsel.
Okay, wait.
Careful.
I'm gonna ask this board to be respectful of each other and of our guests. And so I'm gonna ask that one person at a time speak. And if we have to keep tally, to keep order who goes next, then we'll come up with a method to do that. I understand this is a sensitive issue. But that's no reason for us not to maintain respect of one another. And so I'm gonna ask that we do that, and so in order to facilitate that, sir, I'm gonna ask Candace, are you finished? Were you complete?
So long, you said, sir, it is fine if I share this letter, because I feel like the community should see this, and it is fine.
okay, well, again, two things, because you posed two different things. If you share with the public, that's your choice. If you always have the right to go get another legal opinion and say, this is what this lawyer said, what do you think? So you always have that right. So the privilege belongs to the board and the board members. so what
Okay,
have you.
you can answer the
But let me get back to what I was saying though about the rule of law and the First Amendment. So yes, we have to be aware of what, quote, the majority says, but that cannot mean that the majority gets to oppress or violate the rights, including the First Amendment rights of any minority, right? And however many names are on the petition, there's even a term under First Amendment law called a heckler's veto. So the loudest people or the people who show up or whatever, their voice doesn't control in terms of what the First Amendment says about what you can do in a public forum or not do, as the case might be. Yeah.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
And then I think Ms. Riley had a
Oh,
question,
sorry,
actually.
I did not see you.
I apologize for speaking out of order, Madam Chairman, and to the lady on the end. I'm sorry. But what I was about to say is that your letter and your presentation to me felt like a scare tactic.
Yes.
It didn't seem to be neutral in any way. It didn't seem to be presented as a legal advice. It was one-sided, very much so I felt, even if that's the true way that it is gonna be. It wasn't presented to me as a trustee that I would wonder which way to actually vote. From hearing what you were saying, there was only one way to vote. So I feel like, as Ms. Rice, I would like to get more opinions. I was not here in February to know what happened. I apologize to everyone, but I do have to work for a living. But I just think that not only at this library, I'm familiar with it somewhat, but not the restrooms, but at our library in other counties, they're smaller, so we just have an actual female and a male bathroom, but they've changing the signs, and anyone can go in because there's just one stall in each. You go in and lock the door, end of story. So we don't face the same issues that larger cities do, but the subject at hand is still the same. And it should be that way for all of our libraries. As we know, the only other libraries we actually have are in schools. Besides a public library, the other libraries are actually in schools. And our school rules say that everybody is welcome, just as in a public school it should be. But when you go to someone's house or to their school or whatever, you don't change everything around for your opinion. It has to be where you respect that place for what it's actually for. It's not there for your personal feelings, and I don't know if everybody here are Christians or what. I don't know where the feeling comes that we're all religious people that's just against this. That's not the case. It's doing what's right. We were judged and voted on to be on this trustee board to have the libraries at our best interest for the community, and everyone is welcome. But all of the displays and different things of that nature should not be in a public place. I wouldn't wanna come here if it had a Confederate flag. I wouldn't wanna come here, or some of you wouldn't wanna come if it said Black Lives Matter. There are different things that do not need to be in public situations, but that's your personal opinion. If I see him drive his truck with his Confederate flag, I have no problem with that. That's his truck. He can put it in his yard, he can put it on his truck, he can ride it all around town, but don't bring it in the library. That's totally different.
And that's what we're really trying to say,
And that's,
make it
it's
neutral.
not a religious thing against LGBTQ, somebody help me. And I don't mean that disrespectful, I'm not trying to be funny, but it's not a religious thing against that. We have to stop somewhere and say, this is not for everybody. We can't do this in public places. That's your opinion and I have mine. But if I wanna do Black Lives Matter or whatever, I don't need to bring it here. It's not to persuade anybody one way or the other. And I feel the same way about the different type of displays, not just LGBTQ.
Oh,
Okay. Well, my,
We're trying to keep progressing, so please, I'm sorry. You did great, thank you.
that, so a number of things you brought up there. The public forum of a school is different than the public forum of a public library. And so the First Amendment rules are different. And of course, what you do with your own truck would be different than what you do in a public forum like a library. I do want to emphasize that the First Amendment issues are very clear. And pretty well settled law. And as someone who was hired to advise you, I am very concerned that you not make a mistake that's gonna put you in jeopardy. Sometimes lawyers have to say hard things that people don't want to hear. That's part of my job.
I have a question, Melanie.
This is Tawana. Melanie, go ahead.
I was looking at some information online from the ALA.
Yes.
And it specifically is the library's legal answers for meeting rooms and displays. And there was some information, particularly about a case that happened with the Ohoopee Library. And it was called the Gay Guardian versus the Ohoopee Regional Library, I believe. But in that case, the library moved a newspaper to another section and restricted an area to governmental displays and newspapers, and they actually won that case. So it seems to me that you can put some restrictions on displays.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm very familiar with that case. That was in the Southern District of Georgia, decided by Judge Edenfield, the late Judge Edenfield. And that case turned on the space that was being regulated. And in that particular case, it was like an outer lobby or outer entranceway to the library. And the way Judge Edenfield analyzed it was that that entryway into the library was not a public forum subject to the rules that would be in the public space of the library. So that's the distinction that for Judge Edenfield's decision in the Ohoopee Library case.
So can you repeat that distinction?
It was the space in which, well, in that case, what happened is they had a lobby basically where you came into the library, and they allowed everyone who wanted to have newspapers, magazines, pamphlets, whatever. And a group, and I don't remember the name of the group, but the Gay something wanted to have their...
The Gay Box.
But anyway, the Gay something wanted to have their newspaper in the lobby. There was a lot of pushback on it, so the library made the decision nobody gets to have any kind of newspaper or publication in the lobby. Nobody. So they did get sued, but as the person on the phone said, they being the library board, won, but it turned on the space. It turned on because it was that entrance way, and Judge Edenfield ruled that that wasn't a public space that was subject to the First Amendment rules that govern the rest of the public spaces. The other night on the county commission meeting, there was a comparison to the county commission room to the library. Again, those are different kinds of public spaces. So you have to look at the kind of public space that's involved, because that's going to dictate the kind of analysis under the First Amendment that applies. Okay?
Well, I'm going to read a statement from the ALA legal
This still Melanie?
This is still Melanie. And according to one of the questions that was in this legal answers from the ALA, a publicly supported library may designate use of exhibit space for strictly library activity, provided that this limitation is viewpoint neutral and clearly defined. Libraries may include in this policy rules regarding the time, place, and manner of the use of the exhibit space, so long as the rules are content neutral and are applied in the same manner to all groups wishing to use the space. And it goes on from there. So I think we can have rules and guidelines and regulations, as long as we are maintaining a neutral viewpoint.
And with all due respect, ma'am, it's gonna depend upon the kind of space at issue. And I would also cite the ALA's recent statement that says, the ALA stringently and unequivocally maintains that libraries and librarians have an obligation to resist efforts that systemically exclude materials dealing with any subject matter, including sex, gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. So that is also part of the guidance from the ALA. But, and to your point, you have to look very carefully at the space that's being regulated to determine how much latitude the decision maker has about the regulation. You would also look at the motivation for making the regulation in the first place.
Because there are some cases where that was the determining factor.
It's the motivation.
In the case, the motivation.
Correct.
Correct.
So, may I speak now, Madam Chair? Yes, okay. So, the motivation, if it's for the, idea of neutrality, that's appropriate, correct?
That horse has left the barn,
Well,
ma'am.
according to what she was just saying.
No, but that's not the facts here.
So-
That's not the facts here.
I wanna ask you another question.
Sure.
Okay, are you familiar with Adams versus School Board at St. John's County, Florida?
I am not.
Not, okay, you might need to study up on that. So I'm gonna read you something, okay? This came from our legal counsel number 1. Based upon the Adams case, I believe that a policy, either unwritten or written, that requires employees to use the bathroom of their biological sex would be upheld as constitutional.
Okay. And I am familiar with the lawyer's letter, ma'am, and I am familiar with the litigation in schools based on Title IX and the Equal Protection Law. What I've said to you already is that I think the rules on bathrooms are different, and I think the law is less settled on bathrooms, okay? I don't know how to say it more clearly than
Thank
that.
you again for your opinion.
Well, that's what lawyers do.
That's why we have so many of them.
Exactly right. That's the most truthful thing you said. Thank you.
My question is that if you're saying that this is the First Amendment right and it's against the law, right, for us to restrict these things, so why is this a vote? I mean, why are we being given the choice to vote if it is against the law and we're gonna be sued or whatever? I don't even understand really. I mean, and I'm not saying that, anyway, go ahead. If you,
my advice is that you would table and do whatever you want to do about it. I think people have been, it sounds to me like, in my history of this, is that the community has been pushing for this. And my grave concern is that if you regulate displays, regulate books, regulate book clubs, you're gonna get sued and found in violation of the law and having violated the First Amendment.
All you're gonna get is a little civic study, so.
Okay, so Mr. Herring, no, I'm trying to get his name correct. Mr. Herring, is that correct? Mr. Wade?
It's Mr. Wade Herring, yes.
Mr. Wade Herring. Okay, so to recap, to make sure that I'm clear on what your recommendations are, because I'm clear on what my fellow trustees' perspectives are, so I just wanna make sure again that I'm hearing you clear. In the matter of displays, the First Amendment is really clear, old law laid out. The regulation of displays is a big no-no, right? And could lead to lawsuits that not only result in the library board being sued, but also in us being sued personally.
Correct.
Am I hearing you?
You're
correctly?
hearing me correctly, yes.
Okay, so, on the issue of bathrooms, your recommendation is, I mean, not your recommendation, you can't be as certain in terms of the law, because that is still being played out.
That is correct.
That there are similar lawsuits that are out there that have been, which have gone one way, then appealed, and gone another way, and now being appealed, and so we just kind of, trying to like figure out how that applies to our constitutional rights. But you have made a recommendation.
My recommendation would be that you keep same-sex bathrooms, but you not go that extra step of doing the, as you were identified biologically at birth.
Right, so that we don't create this policy, because then it opens up a door for additional liability in terms of how do we reinforce that?
There's a very practical concern about how to enforce that, who's gonna do that and how. And a very practical concern, again, as I pointed out earlier, about parents and their children. The parents of the opposite, parents with children of the opposite.
Right, that's a big concern of mine. I have an autistic grandson who's probably as big as I am, who is nonverbal, or whose actual, competition level is probably on the third grade level, in which I would not want him to go into a bathroom alone. So I do get that. I am a mother and grandmother, and I do know what it's like to have a small child with you, and they have to go to the restroom, and you have to take them into the women's room with you. I've had, my husband has had to take my daughter. There has even been occasions, believe it or not, where I run into a space and the women's bathroom is out of order, and buddy, I gotta go. And so what I've had somebody do is stand outside the men's room so that I could go into the men's room and go to the bathroom. So, if a rule like this was in place, then I would be in trouble.
Yes.
Run out there to the bush.
Unfortunately, I can't do it on the fly like you can. That's always a conversation I'm having with God, but anyway.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
one of our commissioners would like to speak.
I see it's being,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you for Okay, we'll move on to the next. Are we clear to move on, our virtual attendees?
Yes. Luana, I have another, statement from
Miss Holman. Mr. Tim, but you're out of order, sir, you are out of order, you are out of order. You are out of order, this is not a commission meeting, you are out of order, Tim. Tim, you are.
So educate yourself.
You are out of order. I do apologize for that. I'm sorry, you were saying online, you had a question?
Well, I have another statement from the same ALA manual regarding media and display that I wanted to share with the trustees as we think about this issue. And it is specifically about library-sponsored meetings and display. And the question is, a librarian creates a display, a colleague disagrees with the inclusion of a book in the display. Both people are professionals. No one is requesting that the book be removed from the library, and the director is brought in, and is there law governing this? And it says, although this is not a likely scenario to be brought to court, you can look at how the court might decide to frame the answer. And it says, the institution has its own voice, and in this case, there is no issue involving the possible government censorship of a community voice. The central question would not concern the merits of the display, but rather the focus on who decides within the institution. Ultimate responsibility rests with the governing authority, in this case the trustees, and it's the line of authority within the institution that determines who decides. So it seems to me that we have the authority to make that decision when it's a library-sponsored meeting or display.
And you're right, but we need to make that decision understanding what are the laws that govern, that particular issue. People make decisions all the time that are out of line with the law and suffer the consequences for them. So that's how I see it, but the lawyer would like to address your question,
Sure.
Mr. Herring?
Yeah, the key thing there is who is the decision maker. So if it's staff making an internal staff decision, I think the answer is absolutely correct. There's very unlikely to be a lawsuit, and the staff making a decision is not, quote, government action, generally speaking. If the board makes a decision, that is government action, and if you regulate displays, again, depending upon the motivation, et cetera, you're gonna be violating the First Amendment. So the ALA, I agree with what you just read. The key is who is the decision maker and what is the motivation for the decision maker.
Okay, so hold on, that opens up another question for me, if you don't mind. So that means because of our designation as a governing board, because I hear you making the distinction about whether a staff member is making that decision or whether a governing board. So as a governing board, if we institute that type of policy, then that's what we're making, which can result in a lawsuit versus some kind of consensus amongst the staff.
Correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
thank you for providing clarity.
Two questions, really quick for the lawyer. The first is, what would our legal liability be if, the board decided that we just weren't gonna have any displays? Our walls were all gonna be white, no displays whatsoever. Same with programs, we just didn't have any programs, period. Would we?
Well,
I don't think we need to go there, Mike.
One second, I would again like to establish the quorum in the meeting. And, Mr. Herring is addressing the question of Ms. Howard
I'm just
Jones.
trying to see if the board has other options than specifically excluding a specific group.
And I discussed this in my letter, but if the so-called content neutral regulation has been motivated by particular ideological concerns, and again, you have to look at the space, but in a public space like a library, to answer your questions generally, and they get very, very fact specific, but generally to impose a content neutral rule, given the history of what's been happening, would be a violation of the First Amendment.
Okay, the second question is, to say, whatever the board decides today, if we table it or vote on it, if we do vote on it at any point in the future, and there are, say, one of the trustees might have a concern about it violating the law, you did mention that if you knowingly vote for a policy that you've been informed of the law and are aware of it and still vote to violate it, you'd still be personally liable, correct?
Correct.
So the third part of that question, or second part of that second question is, in that case, would it be best to do a roll call vote on any type of policies like that, so that each individual trustee would be on record one way or the other?
Yes.
Okay, one more question from, Mike Dawson.
Who determines what kind of displays can be put out there?
Generally, that would be up to staff.
So if they didn't put any, just didn't put any.
Well, then, Then, the next question there would be, why did staff decide to do that? I mean, there's a whole bunch of public record here about what's been going on with,
Across the country.
well, not just across the country, but specifically to this place.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden the decision was, staff decided not to do any displays at all, I think that would be subject to question.
So, but the staff has to determine what they wanna put there. Is that what you're saying?
The staff
Somebody has to determine it.
The staff has broad discretion to determine what goes in the library, yes, sir.
Well, my question is, what if you have two staff members who disagree on a display? Then it falls to the director to decide. Is that not correct?
Correct.
You can have staff members who disagree.
We discussed that just a moment ago, yes, ma'am.
And who pays these people?
Oh, hold on one second, cause I'm missing helping this.
Can I get clarification on your answer to her question? That she said that if you were to enact a policy of no displays and no programs, you're saying that would be a First Amendment violation as well?
I think so, given the factual history of what has occurred here, yes, ma'am.
So you're saying that would violate just every group that would ever possibly want a display or anything?
No, I'm not saying that. But what we have are a very specific set of facts.
Well, I'm just trying to get clarification on why you say it would be a First Amendment violation if we display with displays.
Because the facts are, it's because of the disagreement with the LGBTQ community. Those are the facts.
Right, it goes back
Okay,
to,
I want to
the
read
reason.
my question. This is Melanie.
Yes, Melanie.
Okay, going back to if you have staff members who disagree on a display, and the director has to make a decision on the display, if you have no guidelines in place, what is making the director's decision?
Well, there are,
Does
no ma'am,
does their belief?
there are lots of guidelines, including the American Library Association. So there's, and that's why they go to school, and that's why they get master's degrees in library science. There's lots and lots of guidelines out there about how you make those decisions. My point is, that's really not a board function, and that goes beyond just what the law is. That goes to, how does the board want to spend its time and energy? Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, may I speak with him? Okay, so again, if I'm neutral in my approach, and I would like to see neutrality brought back in, that's my motivation, okay? So you're still telling me whether I say no displays for the sake of neutrality, or if I say, hey, let's talk about the US presidents, or fishing, hunting, cooking, any kind of display you want to, but let's not talk about religion, sex, or anything that's very, very, gonna offend someone else. Let's just keep it neutral. You're telling me I'm still gonna be sued because I actually have an opinion.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm saying.
So, that's what you're saying,
Yes,
is we're
because-
all gonna get sued because we're voting with our conscience to make the place neutral. Is what you're saying.
Well,
Given the facts, yes, ma'am, that's what I'm
so we can't
saying.
have neutrality, is what you're saying.
Given the facts,
not
you
neutrality.
cannot, yes, ma'am.
That's what he's just saying.
Ms. Denton, what I understand to be being said is not a blanket statement that people can never advocate or have neutrality. He is saying, under the circumstances that we find ourselves in, where we have been litigating between two major components of our community, that if we were to do that, then it would be like saying we did that so that one side couldn't have what they were fighting for, asking for. So we did it sort of like in retaliation, which then would be an offense of the First Amendment right. It's sort of like on any other job where you have a policy on retaliation. I can't demote you because you didn't go out with me.
But he said it's based on motivation.
That's who? I didn't hear you because I was talking.
I'm sorry. He said it was based on our motivation, and so that's why I'm asking.
Right, but I'm trying to hopefully explain it in layman's terms. I don't know if I was any clearer.
Not very.
So, I got you though.
All right, thank you.
Just a point, I think
Tawana,
Nobody-
Hold on one
County.
second. One second, Melanie, someone else is
we
talking.
didn't have any complaints about displays or programs. And we did have a nativity display, we did have a traditional Christian Christmas tree. We have done that throughout the years, we have partnered with Christian organizations. And we never had any complaints until we opened the LGBTQ and decided to make sure they were represented at least minimally. And I think that's the point where if we were neutral, why didn't we complain when we had the first Christian display? Why is it when we're having the first LGBTQ display? Is that how I'm understanding you?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And,
When people
Hold
complain about
on. Okay, so, actually, that was one of the things, that, as I'm listening to everyone, I'm pondering, this idea of community. And, you know, it is a known fact that in the human dynamic, we tend to be, is it called ethnocentric? Right, and we kind of centering in our own worlds, and we feel like, that's everybody. So when we're talking about our community, I just want to remind us that we have a much more diverse community than we are articulating in our conversation. And that, members from all parts of that community pay taxes, okay? And that traditionally, what I have seen since I've been a library patron and since I've been a board member, is that our libraries have been responsive to who comes, who participates, who articulates a need. And in no way have I ever encountered them to be biased. I will tell you what I have experienced from the first time I came here to now. When I first came to this library, it had one mode, right, which I found did not meet the needs of a library. I'm coming here to learn, I'm coming here to expand the way I think, I'm coming here to meet my growing edges. And I want to not only read people who kind of affirm what I think is right, but I also want to read things that challenge. Not so that I can align with them, but to help check me and help me grow. And as the psalmist says, if there's anything in my heart that shouldn't be, that it might be removed. That I might not only, if I don't agree, come to understand, you know, where people are coming from. Because guess what? I don't know everything. I don't know everything. And so I just want us to keep, and we keep talking about this community, this community, this community, this community. There's a good amount of people here, but there's a whole lot more people out there. And so let's just keep that in mind. I do think there's a way for us to talk kind to each other, even though we're different, to work through things, even though we're different, to come to a medium where everybody can have a space. I don't think it's possible to do it without offending people. I do think it's possible to do with respect, though. And that's kind of where I see these lines being drawn, this idea of, one time, Mike, just one time, but, this idea of being, offended. And the idea that one person knows everything that offends another person. The only other thing I wanna talk to the board about is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because let's say Mike and I have a difference of opinion on one topic, doesn't mean we're gonna have a difference of opinion on every topic. And what I've been hearing and seeing being put out in promotion of what's going on at the library is that if one person has this kind of opinion, reads this kind of book, goes to this kind of church, has friends of this kind of orientation, then that must mean, then they must think this about everything. And that's not true. It's not true. okay? It's just not, it's not true. So I would like for us to put more focus as we have our discussions going forward, to really think about what's in the best interest of the whole of our community. And really think about that. There have been times I've come in the library and we've made a modification because I've come in the library and saw a book on the display, and it was there because it was a new book, and that's where you put new books.
I'm sorry, I'm
And
not
I
trying to get
felt,
out of order, but you
one
called my
second.
name out.
I
My
did because you were
business phone.
talking to me, so hold on 1 second, I'm gonna come back, hold on. And I asked that we reconsider what is the process for us putting these books out? Because while it was a very educational book and it was written by a doctor, I felt that the cover was misleading. And so when I talked to the library staff about it, we agreed that we would modify, and it have. So I'm saying that to say that living is learning, and it's an ongoing process. And sometimes I know when people are offended, they want a reaction like that. But that's why we have these boards and these processes, that's why we consult attorneys. And if we consult one attorney and then we have to get second and third opinions, that makes it take even longer. But what the library board is charged with is to do its due diligence and to gather the information, hear the voices from the community, and make a decision that's best for the whole of the community. And I just want to remind us all of that as we go forward. I really thank you for taking your time to come and to give us your perspective and your advice on the two issues at hand. I thank my board members for being prepared and willing to ask your questions, and we will take all of the voices under consideration. I appreciate you.
Can I say one thing really quick? When it comes to public comment, we've already heard public comment. I've had multiple people over here on this side of the room who wanted to say something, and Lynn and I have both been shushing them. It's not fair to let y'all on that side of the room weigh in when we're not letting them. So public comment is over. It is over.
She lied about me.
Josh, do you want to leave the room?
Hold on.
That's the choice.
Martha, now please, here we go. Let me, for the record, provide some clarity. I did call Joshua's name just a moment ago. Joshua, let me say that it was not meant to put you on the spot, but it was in response to your talking to me while I was talking, okay? So that's why I called your name, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do, for you to stop talking while I was talking. So I appreciate that. So I think that we have had our public comment, and we have had our legal guidance, and so now we're gonna move on to approval for the, what time? Approval for the minutes. Approval for the minutes for the previous. Thank you, Martha. All right, so we asked that we would take a quick look at the minutes. Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
There's okay, so we have Candace Rice has moved that we approve the minutes as being presented, and it's second by Kay Riley. Okay, now, I'm going to ask a question to our parliamentarian recess. At this point, we just have, you said for the minutes, we just have to.
Yeah, you don't need a motion.
We don't need a
You just
motion.
ask if there's any corrections. If there's none, then you
Okay.
accept them as presented.
Okay, so here we go. Are there any questions concerning the minutes? Hearing none, then the minutes are accepted as presented. Thank you. Moving on to our old business.
I'd like to speak on the library initiated, the displays and exhibits.
Okay.
In light of our attorney's information, I think we ought to postpone this until we can get a chance to really understand what's, being said, and truly find out what our counties will and will not do. If, they may say they'll stick with us, and if they do, we may vote one way, and if they don't, we may vote another way. But, either way, I think postpone it.
Okay, is that a motion?
It is a motion.
Can you phrase it?
I make a motion that we postpone the, old business library initiated displays and exhibits.
Okay, that's removed by Mike Dahl and seconded by Candace Rice, that we postpone old business item A, library initiated displays and exhibit policies, so that we can have an opportunity to do more research and due diligence.
And they can
So-
also
We're talking to each other, all right?
I have one thing.
Yes.
After discussing with Mr. Herring, when Kim and Lana and I met with him earlier, we did reach out to our insurance company to get a estimate, a quote.
Oh, thank you for that.
For the errors and omissions claims made insurance, which would cover trustees. It has been in underwriting all week, probably due to some of the issues Mr. Herring raised. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it, or if we can get it, if we'll be able to afford it.
And also if this particular incident would be covered, because it's already in the works.
Right, so, I did want you to let you know, we do that, tabling it would probably get us more time to get clarification on that. The other part is even, and that would be something you might wanna talk with your county, city attorneys, whoever you're appointed by, would be to see what coverage you would have from the county or city side of things, or the Board of Ed, if you're appointed by the Board of Ed. The one thing that Mr. Herring did say, that if you vote for a policy after being informed of the law, and it's against the law, or vice versa, that's something you could still be liable for, even if we do have insurance. So, again, you might want to bring that point up with any attorneys.
Could you repeat that again? That was distracting.
I'm sorry, I've been notorious sitting with, them, and I've been texting her to say, we can hear. So I'm sorry about that. That if you knowingly vote for or against a policy, and that vote is breaking the law, you might still face a lack of coverage, even if we have the proper insurance.
Okay.
Did I say that right?
Correct.
You did. Okay, well, thank you for that information, Martha, and all those in favor of postponing item A, library initiative. Hold on 1 second. I am gonna ask the people who are on the phone, are you all having trouble hearing us?
No.
Okay, well, we're not having any trouble hearing you either. So.
I didn't understand what Martha said.
Okay, Martha was explaining that the library is in the process of securing a policy that would cover the trustees. It is currently in underwriting, but she wanted to point out that that type of policy is expensive, and if it goes through the underwriting and a trustee makes a decision in full knowledge of a law that goes against that law, then you may forfeit coverage anyway. They may not have to cover you anyway. So she just wanted, giving some additional information and saying that if this motion passes, take that time to check with your local authority to find out what kind of protection they would be willing to have for you. Did that sound good?
That's good. No.
Okay, so, we're gonna, what's on the floor right now is a vote to postpone old business item A, library initiated displays and exhibits policy, right? The motion has been made by Michael Dahl and seconded by Candace Rice. All those in favor, say, we're gonna do this. We're gonna, cause they're on the phone. So, all those, Madam Secretary, do you have a roll?
It's the second sheet behind the agenda, if you haven't mixed up your order too much. The colorful one.
Well, I have one here.
Yeah, whatever you have, let's call the names and let them, call his name, let us know if they're voting. Okay?
Okay, so we're doing roll call?
Yeah.
Okay, Lana?
I'm not voting because
So she's the chair, no vote. Myself, I vote yea to postpone. Item A.
Okay.
Okay, who's next? I'm gonna do this.
That's
way.
right, that's
Amber,
fine.
Amber?
Yay.
Yay. Sandra?
Yeah.
Mike?
Postpone.
It's an aye.
Okay.
Yeah,
Candace?
And people online is the one I really.
Okay, and,
Oh, I know the vote.
who's online?
Melanie. Melanie, we're asking for the vote in favor of postponing. What's your
Yes,
pleasure?
I understand.
Okay, who's there with you?
It's Shirley, I vote. Yeah,
Shirley.
I'm sorry, Shirley. Thank you.
Shirley, what was your vote?
Yay.
And who's next?
The Betty's.
Miss Betty?
Betty Stites, I need to ask a question. Is the person with all the signatures, are they getting another lawyer to get his or her opinion?
Yes.
Candace, yeah, far as I
Yes.
know, yes. Well, we're gonna have, yeah.
As far as we know,
There
yes.
will be a second opinion.
Oh, okay.
So,
Betty.
so how are you voting? The question, what's on the
Yes.
floor? Yes to postpone?
Yes, Betty Dean postponed.
Okay, so it looks unanimous. Now let me ask you a question. So everybody voted yes to postpone, do we still have to ask if there are any opposers?
Always, yes.
All right, are there any opposers?
Minnie voted postponed.
Okay, thank you, Minnie. Are there any opposers? All right, well, the yeas have it, and so if the motion passes, we will postpone the library initiated displays and exhibit policy, until a further date, further time. All right, emergency closure policy. I hope so. It would be something. We haven't done anything recently. So we go.
Well, they approved the closure policy. I guess this is the board that needs to approve it too.
Can I ask if this was already in place and this wasn't?
I am going to ask, Martha, if you don't mind, can you provide us a little bit of update on?
This is the same proposal you saw in February. It's just a basic emergency plan. It would outline if we were to close in case of an emergency, what those conditions would be. It does make it county specific, so if Clinch is having a tornado warning, we wouldn't be closing all of our county branches. We would be reacting to the situation specifically in Clinch. So it deals with patron and staff safety under interesting times, caused by either a natural emergency or some type of local safety issue.
Right, so basically, my understanding is that from lessons learned over the last few years, we realized that one generic policy wouldn't work because of the reasons you stated. The counties need to be able to have some flexibility in making that decision.
Right, and
Okay.
the other part is this would replace the, COVID reentry plan. Obviously, we're in a much different situation than we were 2 years ago, so
This
this
is
pretty
correct.
much just has a generic pandemic, response, and it deals with staffing levels and relies on guidance from the, Georgia Health Department based on CDC.
All right, trustees, hearing, the explanation and having reviewed the emergency plan, what is your pleasure?
Offer the motion that it be accepted, Betty Stites.
Thank you, Ms.
Option
Betty.
number one, is that right?
Option number one, yes. Yeah, to approve the emergency plan as presented.
I second.
And it's seconded by Mike. So motion has been moved and properly seconded to approve the emergency plan as presented. And just for the sake of the folks that we have online, we'll go down the line again. Ms. Denton? All those in favor, Ms. Denton, are you in favor? Yes, okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay. So Ms. Betty Stites, are you in favor of approving the plan? I mean, you made the motion. What's the other Betty's name?
Betty Jean, yes.
Yes, are you in favor of the approval of the emergency plan as presented?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Melanie? Are you in favor of approving the plan as presented?
Yes.
Ms. Minnie, are you in favor of approving the plan as presented?
Yes.
And Shirley, are you in favor of?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, is anyone opposed? If so, say so by saying aye. Hearing none, then the motion to approve the emergency plan as presented has passed. Right, our next item of business is bylaws and constitutional committee report.
That was a committee as a whole, so I'm not sure if, Kim or the executive officers have any updates.
No, actually, we are continuing to look at that bylaws and constitution.
Okay.
And that was a set number, wasn't they picked?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a picked committee.
Oh, I thought they ended up
That
going
was
with
the
the
other
committee
one.
as a whole.
The, displays and stuff like that was committee of whole. This one was?
The regional board was committee of the whole for the bylaws. That should be in the minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so do we need to, what are we doing in that case? Where we don't have a report, we just move on?
The report is not ready, we
Yeah,
postponed.
so we just postpone it, do we have to
You
vote
don't
on
have to
that?
do anything.
Okay, great, I didn't know
Just
we
wait
had a
on
vote
them
to
to,
postpone.
just
Okay.
wait on the committee to report.
Report, okay, great. So we'll move to our new business. First order on the new business is public bathroom remodeling. Martha?
So Kim and I have been, chatting a little bit with Lana and Luana also. I met with some people from the county here in Ware on Thursday. We're trying to see what our options are with possibly renovating the bathrooms so that they're all single occupancy only. We are looking at occupancy limits. Georgia code has a requirement that you have to have so many stalls or toilets per square foot, available at all times, or unless somebody's using it. And so we're just trying to make sure that we comply with that before, because right now we could lock all the bathrooms and make people come to the desk and get a key, but we have to make sure we can actually do that according to, occupancy limits. So, just wanna let you know, we're looking at it, at this point, all of our libraries except for Bacon have a single occupancy stall available. In Clinch County, that's the only option they have, is 2 single occupancy. But Pierce, Appling, and Ware all have both. They all have, a woman's bathroom, a men's bathroom, and a single occupancy bathroom. Also, I did review the incident reports for the last 10 years. We've only had 2 issues at any of our libraries relating to the bathroom. Well, actually 3. One was a patron fell and was injured in the bathroom, just an accident. Nobody pushed her or anything. The other was earlier this year. As Josh referred to, the issue was the bathrooms were being blocked, whether intentionally or not, they were being blocked. And 2 people did need to use the bathroom in a pretty dire straits. And they immediately came and told staff what was going on after they had their emergency use the bathroom. We went, we cleared the bathrooms, made the prayer vigils back up. I do not think it was intentional, however, there were some people who felt it was intentional, and at least one person reacted accordingly and used the wrong bathroom. We did talk to that person and put a stop to that. So ironically, the big issue we had was created by the issues we have. In a strange turn of fate, but I think we've got that settled. The third issue happened in January. It was between 2 consenting adults here in Ware, who essentially, one of them had a change of heart after everything was said and done. The police were called. They were both heterosexuals. It did not involve LGBTQ community or any transgender individual. It was simply deal went bad and they changed their minds. So I will say I understand the concerns, I understand the possibility, we are looking into it, but I will also say that the procedure we have in place to try to protect the children using our restrooms seems to be pretty effective. And the bathroom issue could certainly get better if we go to single occupancy. That's what we're looking at trying to do.
Sound like porta potty?
That is a good option, and it's so stylish, it's very in right now.
Very comfortable when you have to go.
Yeah, well, Martha, I would like to thank, you and the library staff, for the diligent way that you come up with ways and processes and practices that you follow to ensure as much as possible the safety of our patrons. So often when we're in these forums and when we're looking at social media, I'm gonna ask you guys to put yourselves on mute until it's time to talk. Shirley or Minnie or.
I can do it from here.
You can do it, thank you, first time. Okay.
I did not know that, I apologize.
So, I just wanna put that out there, that we have staff that are not making astronomical amounts of money. And they are very passionate and diligent in what they do. And they do come up with practices and, things to do to mitigate some of the spaces that we are concerned about. And unfortunately, I didn't see that out there on social media with some of the other stuff that I said. I was told once as a kid, to make sure I learned the whole gospel and not just part of the gospel. And the person who told me that said that, so often what's promoted is what God is gonna do for us. But the wholeness of the gospel is our response to what God is gonna do for us. So when we're looking at these stories, I want us to ask the question, what's on the other side? Is this the whole story? Because a lot of things have been taken out of context. I'm concerned about bathroom safety for everyone. I'm concerned about bathroom safety in general. And so when I was presented with some information that alluded to a transgender person going into the women's bathroom was always gonna be a very real and present danger to some little girl. I'm not saying I'm not concerned about little girls. I was a little girl. I have little girls. I have a granddaughter. But I also know that just because a person is transgender doesn't mean that that person is going to be a danger to someone else. And so in trying to bring the conversation to a higher level where we're not looking at one particular orientation over another, but we're considering bathroom safety, I provided someone with some additional information to help broaden our scope on bathroom safety. And I was surprised when I did my research The first thing I came across is this thing called bathroom violence. And bathroom violence is often perpetrated more, higher against women than men. But the violence that's perpetrated is not perpetrated by somebody who's transgender. It's perpetrated usually by a heterosexual man who dresses up as a woman. And again, when we go through those bathroom things, I'm thinking about library staff and the strain it puts on them to make sure that someone who's dressed like a woman, if we have this policy, is actually has, what their birth genitals say they have. That's just a complicated. So I just want everybody to understand that when we're considering this, for me, I'm considering bathroom safety all around. The next thing that I stumbled across that I didn't expect was to find that the population that has the highest rate of being victimized in the bathroom are people of the LGBTQI community. And so, as a person who cares about people, and as a person who is concerned about bathroom safety, I wanted us to make sure that we considered all those things as we make our decisions about what to do about the bathrooms. Because when we're talking about putting in unisex bathrooms, and we're talking about doing all these other things, taking out stalls, putting locks on doors, all of these things cost money. And we want to make sure that we do the best job at making a decision that's going to last down the road. So I just want to put that out there for everybody to know.
So what we're gonna do about it?
Well, that's not on here. It's about public bathroom in my life. Are you ready to go? Okay, well, we're not finished just yet. Okay, so the next item of business is, I'm sorry.
That's okay. For my own information's sake, the question of remodeling would be to help alleviate maybe some future issues? Is that, or is it even just,
It would be to address the current community concern about the bathrooms being a dangerous place. I will say in Bacon County, it's one of our smaller branches. I think the occupancy might be such we could just lock the doors. Also in Bacon County, I don't wanna pick on Bacon County and make you think that they're just behind because they don't have a single occupancy bathroom. They are a small branch and you literally have to walk right past the front desk to get to the bathrooms. And those staff keep a very sharp eye on that corridor because it dead ends into the meeting room. The meeting room door is locked. So, they're very vigilant, and they usually will tell men or women if they see children going into the bathrooms, they will make the adults wait just to be extra safe. So, but they have that option because they're a smaller branch and the location. So just because they don't have a single occupancy bathroom doesn't mean that it's not safe. They just have different options given the location.
Right.
So we are looking at remodeling all these bathrooms if necessary, or to change how we use these
At
bathrooms?
the minimum, we are looking at locking the bathrooms and making patrons come to the desk to get a key.
Okay, but there is a possibility of remodeling.
Possibly, it would each depend on, the county. We can usually get a 50% match from the state to help alleviate the cost, but that still leaves a pretty hefty burden on the local. So,
Wouldn't that be something the commissioners decide in each county?
oh yeah, once we have the options,
So that
we do
ain't
plan
nothing.
to contact, actually in Homerville, it's the city of Homerville that owns the building, so, but we would reach out to each funding agent who's primarily responsible for the building and tell them, well, this is what we found out, these are the community concerns, which I have a feeling they've already heard about. And I think, if nothing else, it's a good time to maybe get bathrooms remodeled and bring them out of the 70s in some cases.
You're welcome, very welcome. So you see, we are working, we are trying.
I just want to summarize again for me, what branch would possibly have a burden besides Alma, but I know you said Bacon County that they're watching if we went to the single stall. I know
Where is the biggest is
Is
the
the biggest.
least likely to be able, we probably would have to renovate. I'm not sure, like I said, we're still looking at the occupancy and talking to Mr. Herring, who's been kind enough to weigh in on this once we get him the occupancy, and we've been talking to each fire chief and getting those numbers, so that, you know, we can look at Georgia code and see if we can just lock the doors to start.
So we're in pretty good shape, really, with bathrooms and trying to establish the single stall. It's not as big.
We are well on our way, so,
that's a
at this
better way
point,
to
we're just
describe
waiting to hear back, from, I think, 2 of our county's fire chiefs, who are,
The fire chiefs have to give us the occupancy levels for the building, and then that number translated to the number of stalls that we have to have available.
because of course, when we're
In the building
locking
for
a bathroom that has multiple stalls, that becomes a single stall bathroom for all intents and purposes. So that's, you're kind of slashing the number. We just have to make sure whatever we slash it to is still compliant.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, well, let's move on to item B, fiscal year 24 regional office and system-wide budget proposal.
So each county at this point has approved their local budget. What you see there is the same. The regional office budget, the big changes are, we are budgeting for, legal costs in the future. We're also gonna try to make sure to budget for, the insurance costs. And, we're budgeting also to have an audit of the collections to determine existing balance inadequacies, since that was a concern mentioned in my evaluation. Those are costs we have not had before, so it's gonna impact other areas of service, but we're still well on our way, to maintaining what we're doing this year. And we're still waiting for the state for their numbers. We usually get the state numbers by mid-April, but for whatever reason, there's a delay this year. What is not in here is we just found out the state health for full-time staff, the employer contribution is going to increase significantly, so that's gonna impact some things too. But what you see here is anticipated costs through the end of the year for the regional office, and, a very conservative budget proposal so that we can start spending July 1. The budget you'll see in August will have all the actual numbers, not the anticipated numbers. So, this just gives us permission to start spending July 1st. Obviously, we're not gonna go crazy and buy a jacuzzi on the 1st. We'll wait to do that until later. So, anyway, so that's, any questions about the budget?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where would that money come from each county? Where will you place it on the budget?
So that would be a major repair and renovation grant if the state approves it, and there is a waiting list. The 50% match would be filtered through. Essentially, whoever owns the building would provide the upfront cost. We would reimburse half of their cost once we get the state grant. So it wouldn't really be seen on the budget except kind of as a pass-through.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Anybody have any questions down here?
I'm sure you'll have more questions once the actual budget
I'm sure.
in August, so.
Okay, so everybody has had opportunity to review and ask questions on the regional office system-wide budget proposal. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I offer the motion that we accept the budget as proposed.
I'll second.
All right, that's moved by Ms. Riley and it has been seconded by Ms. Smith. All in favor? So let's start with our ladies online, if they are muted, one
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
It's kind of a very weird feeling muting somebody.
That's that government control.
We didn't ask you to.
But you go a whole lot of ways, don't you,
Okay.
Mr. Dow?
They've been here with us.
Melanie?
Well, I can't see how to unmute.
I'm in favor.
All
Okay.
right, Melanie's in favor. Minnie? Betty?
Hold on, I still haven't unmuted them.
Okay.
One day,
They're yelling.
While she's unmuting, we can just go down. Ms. Denton? Are you in favor of accepting the report? Ms. Parrish? Ms. Smith? Minnie? Betty?
Hold on, let me go. Come back.
There we go. Shirley? Betty?
Hello?
It's still muted. I can't figure out how to unmute
Somebody call them at home.
What if you hit mute again?
I tried.
There we go. You gotta probably wait a second.
Melanie,
Hey, Minnie. Welcome back.
Melanie, I was gonna say, they can hit *6 on their keypad and unmute themselves.
Look at that.
Star six.
Uh-oh.
Star 6.
I forgot that.
Okay.
It's been a
Ms.
while
Betty,
since.
Minnie? No,
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Melanie.
It mutes and
Minnie?
unmutes.
Betty?
They're still muted. I can't figure out how to unmute them.
Where's the
They can
I
hear
should
you.
never have muted them to begin with.
Wait, where is that?
Shirley, can you hear me?
Yes, Shirley. You gotta slow down.
Favor the budget.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Betty.
I saw her mouth move, yes.
The which Betty?
Betty
She just
Dean.
shook her head.
Betty Dean. And Betty Sykes is nodding too.
Okay, perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you,
And
ladies.
Betty's, I'm so sorry. I will never mute you
Oh,
again.
Okay.
Did we get
All
Minnie?
those,
Did we get Minnie's vote?
she was, I'm sorry. We got Minnie, right? So, anyone opposed, say so by saying aye. Hearing no ayes, then the motion passes.
The opposite of aye is nay.
Nay, that's right. Nay. I'm sorry, the person that didn't say aye, she said nay. Aye, okay, got you. New business C, signatory authority for fiscal year 2024.
Okay, so you've all heard this before in your local meetings, so I mentioned it. It just gives me permission to sign legal and financial documents on behalf of the library. We have to have it on file each year, so, just FYI, we do need a motion to give me that authority, and then Kim would sign,
So who signs it with you?
just me.
That ain't a good idea.
What do you mean?
It ain't never a good idea for one person to get to control the checkbook.
Oh, no, this is.
Oh, no,
that's not
that's
the
what
checkbook.
this
It's not the
is.
checkbook.
We have two signatures on every check. It's Tawana or Kim, and then me or Karen. This has nothing to do with the checks. This is legal contracts. And then Kim would sign the signatory authority saying that the board had voted to give me that authority. And the board has to vote each year to do that. Don't worry, Mike, I'm not going anywhere with your check.
All right, all right, so the item before us is signatory authority. And so we're gonna go through this again. And the, signatory authority is on the table. What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
why don't you say, without objection? Ask the
I can do
question
that.
without objection. If nobody objects, just unanimously pass it.
Because we were using that during COVID, we didn't like it.
No.
Okay.
I'm for anything to speed this process along.
All right, so I can say,
Without objection?
okay,
That's what he's saying, we can bypass
so I would say,
that without objection.
without objection, can we,
That's all you say. Without objection, and then if anybody objects, then you gotta vote.
okay, but we need the motions first, right? No?
I thought you had that.
No,
No.
no,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
okay, so let's back up. All right, so, the FY 2024 signatory authority is before us, and, what is your pleasure?
I'll make a
For-
motion to, make a motion to approve it.
Okay, so, okay. Mike?
I ain't sure y'all would spend the money.
Okay, Ms. Riley?
She's looking for a second.
Okay, she's second. So it's been moved by Ms. Smith and seconded by Ms. Riley. All right, without objection. That's all I have to say?
That's all you gotta say. No
Okay,
objection.
so no objection, motion passed. Praise God.
We still have time with it.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
we were.
Like, we're learning how to become, parliamentary
We have
experts. Financial, last item, financial report, budget update.
Well, since Lynn is here in person, which doesn't usually happen, do you want to do a little highlight?
Sure. Our total revenue for the period is $460,240.85. We are at 73% of our budget for revenue. Total expenditures is $463,228.73, which is 74% of our budget. Revenue does include our $5,000 that we received for the IMLS Data for Good grant. We got $1,500 this year from the Sandra Deal grant for summer reading, so we were able to buy a lot of giveaways and.
Now, who's that for?
For
That-
Each county.
For each
For each
county.
county?
Yeah, we
Okay.
have 1,500 total, so it was split between each county. We were able to buy T-shirts for the staff for summer reading and all the little prizes that we give away every week for the kids. We have received $18,275.22 for the RISA IT contract that we have with Daniel, who does work for them. And we've also received $9,045 for the ECF grant, which has included our, the data lines for our Chromebooks.
Yes, and in that grant ends June 30th. ECF was the Emergency Connectivity Fund. That was through federal, it was in response to ARPA, or not ARPA, in response to COVID relief. So, yeah, that's the other thing, next year we're gonna foot the bill for those going forward.
So has all the COVID money been spent?
Yes,
Yeah.
and all those grant periods are ending.
And we, as you know from your local boards, we've received all of the ARPA grant money, so we finally got, our car paid for, everything that we purchased with that grant. And we just got approval for the, refund for our CAT 2 project for the.
Wireless
The
upgrade.
wireless upgrade, so we should have that money before the end of the fiscal year. So we're on track, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Questions?
I just have one question. I noticed that one of the notes said bank service charges and postage card costs are higher than expected. What's the cost of that?
Well, for a while, Truist Bank was not charging us for any service charges. And, but, we've done a study and looked at switching banks and, we get charged.
They still give us the best deal,
Yeah.
or their rates are the
So-
lowest.
We just, in postage, we're doing a lot of more interlibrary loans. And so when we get those books or movies or whatever we know that the patrons need, we have to mail those back. We're absorbing the costs for that. So postage is higher than what we had anticipated, because we're really doing a lot more of those than we ever had in the past.
So that means our library usage is up.
Oh, for requesting, yeah, because if we don't have it in Pines, if we don't have an item in Pines, then we can go to other libraries in other states and to get these materials for people. So that saves us money in the long run, because then it's not something that we have to buy to put into our collection.
Or manage, correct, okay.
Madam Chairwoman, I have a question. There is a item in here that in our packet that was not on the agenda, and that is from the state librarian. Is that something we receive every year, or was this due to items going on, and that is the MOE, the, maintenance of effort?
Oh, so that was just for the board's information?
Candace, if you don't mind, can we finish the item of the financial report and then come back to this?
Yes,
Would that be okay?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I thought we were, my
Okay.
apologies.
All right, so anybody have any questions about the financial updates? Yes, ma'am.
I'll ask, I'm not sure about this.
Okay.
$3,577 paid for attorney fees was not budgeted. So
Yeah, that was the
just the
personnel,
one?
Todd Carter, personnel lawyer.
So there's more coming, cause you've got Heron on board too now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Similar amount?
I will see.
Haven't received an invoice yet.
Okay.
think you said community.
Well, the item before us is our regional library board update. So what's your pleasure?
Do we have to approve that, or
We have to
just for our
approve this, or
information?
is it just?
It would be accepted.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, what's your pleasure?
That's it.
All right, Ms. Denton moves that we receive the report as presented. Okay, and Ms. Smith seconds it. What's my phrase? I gotta-
Without objection?
Without objection? Hearing none? The
Okay.
motion passed.
About now.
So then, your question, the letter from Julie after the February meeting, there were a number of trustees who mentioned at the February meeting defunding, that we would lose local funding, this is the state impact.
Okay, so that is in regard to any defunding, so
Yes.
now we know.
Yes, what
The
state
repercussions.
money, what state money we would lose in accordance with any local funding.
So if a county defunded, based on some of this stuff that's going on, you're saying this will happen?
Yes, it has happened. Twin Lakes was the most recent, I believe, but yes, essentially so if in Abilene County, if the funding agents there decide they're not gonna fund the library anymore, then we would be cut by that percentage of population, most likely, that's been what has happened in the past. And we would lose Pines, we would lose Galileo, we would lose all that access, so it would be, they're not playing
We don't
around.
want that to happen, but, I mean, in our county, we have some commissioners that are very upset with all this stuff. And,
Well, if they defunded, then we would lose about 21% of our state funding, because that's the percentage of population for Abilene County.
And that would include
I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying that.
Right.
Right.
That was just for information to see the state
Because
impact.
without a library, I think it affects- it's fine. Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Did that answer? Did you guys Candace? Okay. All right. So it looks like we're down to the place everybody's been waiting for.
I'm gonna do it. I make a motion that we dismiss.
All right, as this motion is undebatable, right?
No,
We'll have to
it's a
get
main motion since there's no business on the floor.
It's the main motion, so we
Right.
just-
You gotta have a second.
Oh, it has to have a second. Okay. But it's not debatable, right?
Yes, it is,
It
if
is,
it's a
okay, so
main motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, no, I'm supposed to say, wait.
Got it.
Without objection, all right, meeting's over.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Lana, I want you to go home and get in front of the mirror and just talk to
That's, you see what they're doing, that might be the only option, I don't want that. They do that, like they want that, I don't want that.